Now, we must tell you in our analysis, we do not make the errors that others do. Anytime you make an analysis of an oppressed people in any aspect of their life and you leave out the enemy, you will never come to a correct analysis. On the contrary, you will blame the oppressed for all of their problems. Therefore, we tell you from the very beginning, we've never taken the line of others that the biggest problem that we have is we ourselves. No, our biggest problem is our enemy, capitalism, and it must be destroyed.
No disagreement there with the OG Kwame Ture. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Stir Crazy, episode number 67. Virtue knows no color line. That is a quote from the great Ida B. Wells, who would be celebrating a birthday today. Happy birthday also today to Asada Shakur. I am your host, Kim Brown. Welcome to another episode of The Spot here on The Real News, where we sit around unfiltered, unscripted, extemporaneous even, sit around and give our news and analysis and opine about the politics of the day. So coming up on today's show, we have a really interesting show for you. First of all, your boy Donald Trump might have made the argument for abolishing police all by himself. A singular thought that escaped the lips of Donald Trump could have possibly even sealed the deal, maybe his own argument why police should be defunded. But there is a pretty interesting Trump campaign ad that's out right now that I am concerned it could be pretty effective for the president as he seeks re-election, even though he's down in the polls. Also coming up on today, we're going to be discussing the issue of poverty and how over 90% of people who make minimum wage cannot afford rent in any given American city. Yeah, you heard that right. How can people live in this time right now, especially during a crisis involving the pandemic and the economic crisis, the unemployment crisis, all kinds of crises all over the place, and yet most people cannot afford to have a roof over their head. We're going to get into that and why hunger might kill more people than COVID. We'll have more details coming up there. Of course, we always want to hear from you in the chat and in the comments and on Twitter. We shout out to everyone that's watching us live right now via Periscope. We appreciate it. You can always hit us up with your comments, questions, concerns. We're interested in all of those things. And now, time for me to introduce our duo of a panel. I feel as if we are a trio today. I'm not really sure. Are we the Beastie Boys? Are we Destiny's Child? I'm not exactly sure what trio we're going to be, but it's going to be one of them. We'd like to welcome back friend to the show here on Stir Crazy, Marcus Ferrell. He's a political consultant, big fella doing big things. Also joining us today, our Real News visuals and research producer, Andrew Corkery. Andrew has been on vacation. He has returned and joined us. So thank you, gentlemen, both for being here today.
I'm beatboxing.
Thank you so much for having us.
Fat boy.
Oh, we the fat boys. Can I be Prince Marky D? I would love to be Prince Marky D. Can I be Prince Marky D?
What's up? I'm gonna let y'all pick. I don't know. I'm gonna let y'all have at it.
The fat boys are back. And you know they can never be back.
Can never be whack. The fat boys
are back. Hey,
Let's get it. Let's go.
All right, y'all. Speaking of the fat boys, let's talk about your man, Donald Trump, 45, the orange man in the White House. Donald Trump is being himself. Let's pop up this tweet where Trump was just doing his usual brand of talking out of his anus. He was talking about we need to Joe Biden wants to abolish the police and abolish the Second Amendment. All right, here we go. Donald Trump. Joe Biden and the radical left wants to abolish the police, abolish ICE, abolish bail, abolish suburbs, abolish the Second Amendment, and abolish the American way of life. No one will be safe in Joe Biden's America. Well, I'm probably halfway inclined to agree with the president, except for the fact that no one is safe in his version of America right now either. And you guys, Trump gave I won't say interesting interview. None of Trump's interviews are really interesting because he doesn't really say anything compelling. It's just really what brand of crazy/stupid thing is he going to say this time? Well, he sat down with CBS News to talk about a variety of issues. But here's what he had to say about what has been happening in the country since the murder of George Floyd and his thoughts about defunding police. Let's take a look.
Let's talk about George Floyd. You said George Floyd's death was a terrible thing.
Terrible.
Why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country?
And so are white people. So are white people. What a terrible question to ask. So are white people. More white people, by the way. More white people.
Research suggests that black people are about 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. But the overall number of white people killed is higher because white people make up a larger percentage of the overall population.
Now, Marcus, Malika Jabali wrote a really interesting, really poignant column in The Guardian talking about, Donald Trump, police do kill more white people than black people. Maybe that's the fucking problem, that police are out here killing Americans at ridiculous rates, pretty much uncomparable to many places around the nation. Around the globe, rather. So, Marcus, if police are killing more white people than black people, why are police killing people? Period. Maybe that's a good argument for defunding/abolishing the police. What do you say?
I say that those dog whistles are loud enough to get every Republican that has dirt/mutt policies towards African Americans and just people in general. That gave out the ultimate dog whistle. He just basically wrapped himself in the doggone rebellious flag, the Confederate flag, in a heartbeat, and basically doubled down on every negative narrative and stereotype that he possibly could in one interview, and basically bashed and banished us to actually saying, between that and his tweets, he is providing the perfect cover for Democrats to actually attack and say, well, maybe it's just a good idea if we defund the police since they're killing people. But we're not going to take advantage. I want my party to take advantage of it, damn it. I want my party to actually use those talking points that he's given us and the streets are giving us to just wipe him out for good, and also make sure that American citizens who happen to be African American in all colors are safe. But the problem is, because I always tend to go back to my Democrats because they always want me to vote for them. So the problem is Donald Trump can say all kind of crazy shit that he wants to, but we never take advantage of it because we don't necessarily think strategically, and strategically thinking means to them, I want to get moderate Republicans who are busy listening to this crap, thinking that, well, maybe there are criminals.
Hey, Andrew Corkery. So the Trump campaign has this ad out, right? Now, nobody watching this show is going for Donald Trump. However, we can acknowledge if something is effective or not. And I think that this ad is pretty effective for people who maybe don't understand or possibly even don't care about the issue of police brutality, and to even understand all the complexities behind defunding the police. I want to run this Trump campaign ad. I saw this air on my local, NBC affiliate this morning. I was like, damn, yo, I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's take a look at that one.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Now, listen, we don't like Trump around these parts, but Andrew, if you're a person who maybe voted for Trump and possibly also voted for Obama, and you don't like Trump's tweeting, but at the same time, you appreciate, whatever job you think the cops do in your community, an ad like that might get you to reconsider voting for Joe Biden. And I like the way that Trump is actually trying to paint Joe Biden as the defund the police candidate, when Joe Biden has said no such thing. What's your reaction to that campaign ad from the Trump folks?
It kind of reminds me a lot of the Willie Horton ad that George H.W. Bush ran back in 1988. And it just shows that the Republican Party really, when they have their back up against the wall, the only tactic that they have is fear, is scare the living shit out of white people. That's literally the main go-to. So, it's not surprising that Trump's doing that, considering how much he's completely botched this coronavirus pandemic. issue. You know, we have countries all over the world saying, you know, on bar signs in England, for example, there's, you know, if Americans come in, they have to be accompanied by a parent, things like that. So, I mean, this is the America that we live in right now. And so the only way to get people really motivated to vote for Trump is through fear, which is how he won the last election, claiming that, you know, Mexicans are rapists and all these other ridiculous, unproven and racist lies that he told that were just part of the Republican Party ethos for years and were fomenting under the Obama administration for years. And so it's not surprising to me that he goes to this length to try to connect Joe Biden to the radical left when, honestly, Joe Biden could not be further from the radical left. He's barely even center. So, I mean, it's kind of comical if you understand anything about, you know, political ideology, if voters understand anything about that, where people sit on the political spectrum, to equate Joe Biden with Black Lives Matter is just completely antithetical to reality.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing about Joe Biden is that he's more of a Republican than Donald Trump. If you look back at
he's like a Rockefeller Republican. He's like to the right of Obama, honestly, you know, so it's like
100%.
He's going to defund the police. He's going to listen to Black Lives Matter. Right. No, maybe a little bit more than Trump, but let's be real.
That's why the Lincoln Project is actually supporting going so hard for him and going after him, because they know for a fact that, look, we can get a moderate Republican in here and life will be back to normal.
Right.
Tell people what the Lincoln Project is, Marcus. Sorry, not to cut you off, Andrew. What is the Lincoln Project for those who may not be familiar?
So I believe the Lincoln Project is the Republican organization that is anti-Trump. And they're spending a whole lot of money bashing down Trump from his left, but we are kind of like they're to the right of Democrats. But since they're going so hard, I think they're like equal to moderate Democrats. So like I'm trying to get my little like levels together here. So I think they are leftist, centrist, rightist, or something like that. But whatever they are, they're Republicans and they hate Donald Trump.
Who's bankrolling them? Is it Soros? Is it George Soros? The Republicans.
David Frum is doing that.
They love to shout out Soros money behind there. Well, speaking of defunding the police, guys, even though it may not be getting national news coverage, there have been ongoing protests pretty much every city you can think of across the country. And in a lot of places, the police are giving the public ample justification as to why they should be defunded. I want to take a look at a video at a protest recently in Los Angeles where it started out peaceful. And then what we're going to see is the LAPD forcibly remove a man who is in a wheelchair out of his wheelchair, take his wheelchair from him, and chaos ensues. Let's take a look at that. That video there, courtesy of Twitter user Action Advocate. Gang, LAPD and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department have been out here showing off. There is a case, I saw this actually on, what's his name? Don't call him the name that everybody else calls it. Sean King. I was going to call him a name that other nickname that other people have called him. I'm not going to do that because I don't know that brother personally. However, Sean King was circulating a report from out of Los Angeles where a Black woman had her home Police came in her home while she was in the shower to serve a warrant on a family member who was not even present in the home. They took her out of the shower, butt-ass naked, on her front yard, hog-tied her, put her in the back of a squad car, and now she has filed a civil suit against the Los Angeles Police Department. And there was a story reported by the Los Angeles Times. I think we have this clip, this article rather, of the LAPD. 3 Los Angeles Police Department officers have been charged with falsifying documents, alleging that people were gang members and or associates of gang members when they really weren't. And another related story from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, a captain in that department made a Facebook comment talking about 18-year-old Andres Gerardo, the 18-year-old security guard who was shot and killed. He was shot 5 times in the back by Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. The Facebook post said that, quote, that Mr. Gerardo, quote, chose his fate, and posted a number of other racist comments. So when it comes to, reforming the police / defunding the police, the cops are making that argument right there for themselves. But Andrew, there was a story came out in The Intercept that demonstrated that police knew that far-right extremists were way more than a threat than so-called Antifa or Black Lives Matter, but yet they ignored these threats. What was the story coming out of The Intercept, Andrew?
Yeah, so basically this was a large cache of law enforcement materials that was recently hacked and posted online under the title, quote, Blue Leaks, providing an unprecedented look at communications between state, local, and federal law enforcement in the face of nationwide protests that have been going on. But among the steady stream of threats from far right groups and things of that nature that were out there were repeated encounters between law enforcement and heavily armed adherents of the so-called bungalow movement, which welcomes armed confrontation with police as a means to trigger a civil war. In an analysis of nearly 300 documents that reference Antifa, The Intercept found substantive reports of lethal right-wing violence and threats that have received little to no mention from top Trump administration officials. For example, the leak materials show that on May 29th, 2 days before Trump tweeted that Antifa would be labeled a terrorist organization and Barr issued a DOJ statement, the president's own Department of Homeland Security analysis issued its open source intelligence report, specifically detailing how white supremacists on the channel Telegram, an encrypted messaging service, was encouraging followers to capitalize on unrest by targeting the police with Molotov cocktails and firearms. So, and then one thing real quick here, just to cap this off, the director of the ACLU's National Security Project told The Intercept that, quote, throughout the documents, you see counterterrorism agencies using extremism so broadly as to mean virtually anything that encompasses dissent. There are instances in which people engaging in white supremacy and violence get the benefit of the doubt as a potential lone offender, while others, people of color in particular, who present a dissent against the government and injustice, are smeared as threats with guilty by association all over them. So that's basically what's happening here with this Intercept story, and it's a lot to unpack. But I mean, this is kind of something we thought was going on, but just to see it in clear data and leaks and stuff like that is really kind of mind-boggling.
Marcus, I mean, really, this is a continuation of the historical links between law enforcement and white supremacist militia groups. Thinking of the days in civil rights and pre-civil rights, when Black people or even, white people who were allied with Black people trying to get Black people the right to vote, that they were, being denied, and people faced arrest and harassment. And, if a Black person found themselves incarcerated in the county jail, they'd have to worry about the Klan or another white supremacist militia, coming to get them, possibly lynch them, all under the tacit approval of the sheriff or the local law enforcement there. I mean, that was fully allowed. That was very much standard operating procedure for a long period of time during through big swaths of this country. I mean, how law enforcement continues to be sympathetic towards right-wing extremists. I mean, when the fuck is that going to end, if ever?
Yeah, listen, when you have law enforcement that literally is right-wing extremists, then they're talking to their brothers. Sandra Bland didn't kill herself. That didn't happen. But yet, that was the narrative that came out of that police department, right? I want to touch on something before I get to the last portion. Did y'all notice how those cops, after they pulled that brother out of his wheelchair, that like no one said, "Oh, this is a bad look. Y'all don't need to do that." Like, there's no cop in that whole area that was like, "That guy's in the wheelchair. Maybe we shouldn't pull him out of a wheelchair." And then the kicker, they broke the damn wheelchair. Like, you know how full of FOS you have to be to actually break someone's wheelchair? What I think is that the police departments across the nation want to somehow manage to make the movement. Some police departments want to make the movement seem a lot more violent than it is. They don't want peaceful protesters because they're very angry right now. They want to go out and bust some heads. And you're protesting with all your cameras and stuff, showing all these peaceful protests across the country. You're messing up the damn plan. You're supposed to be angry and violent and give us a reason to bust your head and shoot black people and shoot white people who are sympathetic to them. That's basically what they're trying to do. And once we realize that, I mean, it was the year 2003 when the FBI came out and said they are white supremacists who are entering police departments across the nation, and we need to watch out for it. And no administration took calls to that, even including the Obama and H.W. Bush actually said, well, let's try to weed this out, nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. Well, now it's a damn problem. These guys are an institution. They have Slack channels. They have Google threads. They have all types of ways to communicate to each other just so they can make it seem like someone has done something a lot more illegal towards them in a violent way so they can literally shoot everybody. These guys are thirsting. They have a bloodthirst to use a tank and that all that military equipment that they have. They have a bloodthirst for trying to use smoke grenades and rubber bullets and aim them at people's heads. Not their bodies like they're trained to do, but aim them at people's eyes. And it's a damn shame.
Yeah, and gang, if you're on Twitter, just real quick, Andrew, you guys follow Chuck Modiano. I think his Twitter is @ChuckModi. He's been following the DC protests and talking to people who have been doing mutual aid community work down and around downtown Washington, D.C., including people that have been cooking, making free food, giving out to not only protesters, but homeless people. And he has documented where a lot of these volunteers have had their grills smashed by police. They have had food just, stomped on, poured out in the street. They've had their electronic equipment broken up and confiscated by Metropolitan Police Department. So the cops were 100% correct, Marcus. Like, the police are out here ready to fight. And the problem is, the folks are out here ready to make their message heard, not necessarily fight hand to hand with the police, because we already know who's going to win that fight. But at the same time, because the protests are not sexy anymore, because they're not burning shit up and breaking shit up, that has now created a problem with the narrative. Andrew, I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, the police obviously view this movement as an existential threat to their understanding of what they do in society. And so when you do that, when the police realize that they think this is an existential threat to them, they will justify damn near anything to keep their shit on lock and keep everything in place the way that they want to do it. So, this incident with the wheelchair is just one incident in a plethora of incidents that have been documented. For example, the New York Times just documented how in over 60 to 70 different videos, the NYPD are out here showing themselves to be beating the hell out of everyone that's peaceful protester. So, this is an extension of the police department worldview that has been codified over a generation and infiltrated by these right-wing groups and had that ideology seeped into them in a lot of different areas. And it's an extension of that, and it should be looked at as such. So I think that when we're dealing with the police, we have to recognize that We have to continue going out on the streets, mobilizing, organizing, protesting in order to show the other narrative and to thrust it upon the reality that the police think that they're living in.
Guys, I wanted to switch gears for a second. Hold on. Before I switch gears, let me read some comments from the comments because we got a bunch of them. Kiana Rainey says Biden wants to give the police money too. So him and Trump are on the same page with that one. Yes, Kiana, 100%. But you see how Trump, I mean, if we're just talking about this from a strictly political sense, you know, Trump is playing some chess here with Joe Biden, trying to paint him as being part of the radical left. We all know that that's not the case. Adengo ate me baby says the will tell him to stand up, then beat him for not complying. Yeah, the police. Yes, 100% when it comes to that brother in the wheelchair. And Prince of Judah 79 says fear is the agenda, 100%. Hey guys, so I wanted to move along to a bit of policy news. This one coming out of Asheville, North Carolina. In case you have not heard, the Asheville City Council has decided to give Black people reparations. That sounds cool, right? Well, it may not be exactly in the form that we would traditionally think that reparations would come. Here's a local report about what the Asheville City Council decided to do.
Rather than giving cash payments directly to Black families, City Council's resolution calls for rearranging how government money is spent with the goal of bridging the generational wealth gap between Black and white families. After protests against police brutality in Asheville, City Council responded by unanimously passing a resolution supporting reparations for the city's Black community. The resolution, read during Tuesday's virtual meeting, also offers an apology.
The City Council of the City of Asheville, 1, apologizes, makes amends for its participation in and sanctioning of the enslavement of Black people. 2, apologizes and makes amends for its enforcement of segregation.
The resolution lists oppressions of Black people, from slavery to segregation to housing and wage discrimination. It directs the city manager to create a plan to build generational wealth and boost economic mobility in the Black community. It will also build a new commission to repair damage caused by systemic racism.
We really want to be looking to change the investments that we make as a city, the policies that we have as a city, the programs that we have.
Councilwoman Julie Mayfield says the conversation around reparations runs parallel to the conversation about defunding or reimagining the police.
There should be resources that are now going to the police that can go to other things. And, you know, how much that is, we don't know. How long that will take, we don't know.
She says the city isn't looking to raise taxes right now. That city councilwoman says, as far as she's aware, this is the first time a city in North Carolina has voted in favor of reparations.
Now, Marcus, there's a couple of things jumped out at me in that clip courtesy of CBS 17 in Asheville. First of all, why do they have Brother Keith Young up there making the apology for slavery on behalf of the whole city of Asheville? I said, of all the white people, I'm sure, on the Asheville City Council, y'all made Keith get up there and apologize to Black people for slavery. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, why not just cut the check? Or is this a step in the right direction in terms of structural change and acknowledging the history of systemic racism and as it relates to, you know, housing, employment, and the criminal justice system? What is your take on this?
When it comes down to reparations, that's not reparations. That's a good step to equity. Right? That's the bare minimum. That's just the equitable policy that making things right within the community that should have been made right a long time ago. But that's not reparations. Reparations is pay me what you owe me. I built these roads. You have institutional wealth. There's people who have benefited right there in Asheville, North Carolina, from slavery that their families and descendants have benefited from it to the day. So they branded it one thing and it's another. And even the branding coming from an official city the size of Asheville is a good thing, right? It is a step right in the right direction. But, you know, don't call a frog a pig, right? Like, don't don't try to make policy that y'all should have been doing, that America should be doing in general a long time ago. Things like making sure defunding the police is not reparations. Defunding the police is just good policy. Defunding the police is just righteous policy that we've been asking for so we don't get killed and we're not over militarized, right? That's not reparations. Reparations is, okay, you can give me a check. Okay, you can get rid of all of my bills for the rest of my life. Okay, I don't want to get taxed again. Okay, I want $396,000 for every Black person in America. Whatever it is, that is a cash or form of payment that is going directly to benefit individual descendants of slaves. And there could be an argument made about whether that's Caribbean, African descendants, or just straight up American descendants. But that ain't reparations. What we saw right there is just basic level policy that should be happening all over the country any damn way.
Andrew, do you think that the Asheville City Council here just misbranded their latest efforts and attempts at equality in their community? I mean, I agree with Marcus. I don't think they should have called it reparations. I mean, I think of reparations, I'm thinking cut the check, bruh. You know what I mean? Your nice proclamations, well-intended as they may be, what does that do tangibly in people's lives every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think you say that they misbranded it. I think it seems very intentional how they branded it, in the sense that they want to try to make reparations, the concept of it, watered down and kind of less scary for white people. Because if there's anything I know about, you talk to white people about reparations, or particularly older white people, unfortunately, they don't grasp the historical understanding of what slavery and what segregation and all of these things and subjugation of Black people in this country has really done, and how it's led to the system we have today. So they view it as something that's getting, taken away from them. So I think this is an attempt by Asheville to kind of plot themselves in the middle, where they can say to the left that they are doing something in the right direction that they call reparations, while at the same time not doing what you actually need to do, which is what Marcus outlined, which is, cut the check, invest in these things that we need to invest in, actually have a robust analysis about who gets reparations and who doesn't, all these sorts of things. And instead they're taking the platitude way out that doesn't scare people as much. So I think that that was their intention, to kind of bridge that divide there, at least looking at the report and how the report was characterizing the situation about what they were doing. And just another point on the, having the Black gentleman apologize for segregation and for racism and all of these things. In that Zoom call, there was at least 15 white people. They showed a shot of that. There's 15 white people in there. And you got to pick one of 3 Black dudes on there to apologize for segregation and racism. I mean, it's just, y'all are tripping, Can
I add something to that?
Yes.
This is why HR 40, even though people want direct reparations, this is why HR 40 and the study of reparations, it is important. Now, there's a lot of people, whether ADOS or just reparations folks in general, who are we don't need a study. We just need to implement reparations. Well, if a study is done correctly, then they're not going to be allowed to just call bullshit reparations. And what I mean by that is, okay, how much work was done by slaves in America. And then there is a factual scientific study for numbers abound for exactly what we should be getting right now for that. And then cities like Asheville wouldn't be able to call it whatever reparations when it's not. So this is a perfect example about why we should actually be pushing for the study of reparations. So it is a number that is attached to it, hardcore, official, by any state government, any city government, preferably the federal government, that actually says, okay, we owe you guys. This is what we found out. Here are the numbers. They're fact checked by an independent group of people, and we can actually start the process of implementing this.
Yeah, I agree with Marcus on that. I think that if you did have a real codification of what the numerical value of this is in a tangible and fact-driven study way, I think that would go a long way, because I think in the last 10 years, particularly actually in the last 7 years, the media narrative about Black Lives Matter and like the media support for Black lives and also the public support for it has gone up exponentially. I mean, like just in the past month and a half alone. So you add that to having a data set of numbers that codify what the consequence was of slavery and what the consequence was of segregation and all of these policies that have existed in America since its founding. And I think you would actually have a good amount of people in society that would be on board for that because the political climate has changed. So long as you don't have that study, so long as you don't have the analysis and the facts and the numbers to back it up, people are still going to try to weasel their way out of not providing tangible reparations to Black people in America because they're going to say that it doesn't affect them, it's not related to them. When you actually have to confront them with the data and you have that in a way that's reported ad nauseum by the media, in a hopefully a way that is fair, then I think you can get some real change. And I think we could, get something going with reparations.
Gentlemen, I can remember when Ta-Nehisi Coates, the prolific author, writer, wrote his opus, The Case for Reparations, that stunning analysis, comprehensive, in-depth report that he wrote for the Atlantic several years ago. He was on a little speaking tour about it, and I went and saw him speak at the synagogue, the 6 and I Synagogue. It's right downtown DC, a couple blocks up from Verizon Center, Capital One Arena now. And he said something that was so profound. Like he talked about how, at a certain point in the late 1700s, early 1800s, that you had like a couple of generations of Black people who 5 generations before them saw slavery and 5 generations ahead of them saw slavery. And I just thought about like how much of a hopeless situation those people living in that time must have felt, and really how profound a time that we find ourselves in here in 2020. But the debt is still there from the brothers and sisters, from the ancestors from the 16, 17, 1800s who remained in bondage. That debt still needs to be paid to their ancestors, to their descendants. So yes, Asheville's taken a positive step. I think they just calling it the wrong motherfucking thing. Speaking of money that people desperately need, guys, we are in a critical situation economically here in the United States with a very high unemployment rate, one of which we hadn't seen in many generations since the Great Depression / recession levels. Over 40 million people unemployed. An additional million plus people filed for unemployment last week. These jobs more than likely are not coming back. In addition, the assistance from the federal government is also not forthcoming. Congress has failed to act on a second stimulus package to benefit Americans, where the extra $600 a week in unemployment assistance will be expiring in a couple of weeks at the end of the month, July 31st. And I'm sure most people have already gone through that $1,200 stimulus check. That was really just a month's rent for a lot of people. And not only are we facing a big eviction crisis, we're also dealing with the hunger crisis as well, Andrew. Let's start there, because more Americans are going to probably die from hunger than they are from COVID at this point. What is this study that you had a chance to examine? What did it tell us?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, it talks about America, but it talks a lot about the global South and other countries around the world as well. So pretty much millions of people are being pushed towards hunger by the coronavirus pandemic, which has ended up killing more people through lack of food than from the illness itself, according to this Oxfam report that was released earlier this week and published an article about it in the Guardian. So closed borders, curfews, and travel restrictions have disrupted food supplies and incomes in already fragile countries, as in America, and forcing an extra million people closer to famine, particularly in Afghanistan, and highlighting the humanitarian disaster in Yemen, where 2/3 already live in hunger as a result of the Saudi-led US-backed bombing campaign that has taken hold of the country for at least 5 years now. Oxfam basically said that up to 1,200 people could die from hunger every day globally. 2,000 more than died from COVID-19 each day in April. And along with Afghanistan, the charity identified the Democratic Republic of Congo, Venezuela, the Western African Sahel, and Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, Syria, and Haiti as other extreme hunger hotspots. And the UN World Food Program, which estimates that the number of people facing hunger will increase by about 122 million this year as a result of the pandemic. The UN World Health Food Program has just cut deliveries by almost half to northern Yemen. And Oxfam said that humanitarian assistance around the world has basically been curtailed at large by restrictions on movement and other precautions to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So clearly, with the virus taking over in a lot of places, obviously America is, number one virus spreader at the moment. But we have other problems to deal with in addition to the virus that could be just as bad, if not worse.
That's pretty stunning. Another aspect about the economic fallout from the coronavirus is that according to, let me make sure I get this right. This is according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition. They have released their annual report. It's called Out of Reach. Here in the United States, full-time minimum wage workers cannot afford a 2-bedroom rental anywhere in the U.S., and most cannot afford a 1-bedroom rental in 95% of U.S. counties. And this is pretty much pre-pandemic. This is a situation that American workers were facing before COVID struck, Marcus. And even if we are able to get this virus under control, which hopefully in the future, sooner rather than later, we will be either dealing with a vaccine, or perhaps American social behaviors will change in the sense that the virus will have a chance to erode and shrink down in the number of people that it infects. But this is a problem that is going to be with us after the virus. And most people can't afford to keep a roof over their head. The working poor, people who work 40 plus hours at hourly jobs, more than one hourly job in a lot of cases, can't afford to live in America. How are we going to resolve that? What policies can be put in place to make sure that people can afford to live in a country in the world's richest nation, that people who go to work every day can afford to live?
I mean, a real stimulus package. If we look at it, we have the Republican Party is currently pushing for a $1.3 trillion bill, when at first they didn't want to give us anything. The Democratic Party is looking at another $3 trillion stimulus plan, and Wall Street is looking at everybody like, give us our money first. And that's the problem. Right. Whatever stimulus package that comes out, we know for a fact that Wall Street is going to try to get as much of it as possible. And it doesn't go to the people that it's supposed to go to. Now, if we restructured our thought process and we restructured where the money is actually going to go and actually get it into the hands of people, the economy will naturally flourish if we were actually trying to take care of people. But Wall Street does not want that. And our government officials fundamentally don't know how to write any law that directly cuts out corporate businesses and puts it into the hands of people, because to them, that's too much like socialism. And to be quite honest with you, it's the American people who are paying those taxes. So how we fix it is we have to be honest about the assessment of where the money is going. We have to actually have open conversations. And when the next stimulus bill is passed, we need to know exactly what businesses got the money, right? And we need to know exactly where the money went and how come it took Wells Fargo, 3 months to get some people their checks. So how come Donald Trump wants to sign every single one of the checks like a crazy psychopath that he is? But how we fix these things are very, very simple. It's just that we elect people to do the business of the people, but they get there, or they're there for so long and they're doing the business of Wall Street. It's a very simple fix, but I mean, we already know how capitalism runs things. And here's the thing. Capitalism in itself is about to create the new Dust Bowl in America. They're about to create the new Great Depression of America, and it's going to fold on themselves because they can't get out their own way. Next month, up to 30 million people can lose their, can be homeless on top of COVID, on top of a food crisis. What we're looking at right now is almost a slow destruction of the American economy and the American people. And some people want it just like that. So it's like the grand purge from some power that be. And let me be very careful, but be very frank. They want people to die. It is blatantly obvious, and they can sit on their perch and they can make decisions because they know that they're going to get taken care of. But as soon as those Kroger stores in DC start going out, and there's no food there, then we're going to have to start answering some serious questions. And then let them eat cake mentality is no longer going to work.
That's what I'm trying to figure here. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Just to add on that quick point about Wall Street. I mean, if you look at how Wall Street has functioned since the pandemic, I mean, initially they had some, low returns and they lost a lot of money at Wall Street. After that, Wall Street has just been going up exponentially. And it just shows without a shadow of a doubt that the Wall Street based economy that we have that invests in the businesses first and the people second, if not at all, is totally based in a fictitious lie of trickle down economics. And so as long as that system persists, and as long as those two tracks of the American economy are completely disparate from one another and unrelated and unconnected, you're going to have a situation where this crisis gets expedited and it gets worse. So, I mean, I think people need to really invest in the local communities. We have to deal with local government as well as we deal with the federal government. So this is a really good time for a lot of these, these local towns and municipalities and also states to kind of go out on their own and start tracking their own trail and doing things within their own power to show that a socialized system in America that's run for the people can actually benefit the greater of society. So I think that needs to happen. And we already see that happening in a lot of different states all over the country, but it has to be created into a narrative that can be thrust upon the federal government to force them to do this. But the problem is they're so bogged down in all this Wall Street money, it's impossible to do that right now.
I mean, and we're really headed towards a perfect tsunami. I can't even call it a storm because it's way worse than a storm. I mean, Andrew just hit it on the head, or Marcus, both of y'all hit it on the head, that we're about to have tens of millions of people be homeless now as a result of the eviction protections going away, lack of stimulus coming back, lack of jobs going back. In fact, in states that have had to shut down again and had to stop their economic reopening, I mean, those people are once again out of work, and those people haven't even been factored into the unemployment numbers as they stand right now. So we are looking at the COVID coming back with a vengeance in the fall. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Cove, baby. C to the O-V. I-D, I will jump on you and kill thee. Okay, that's coming back. We want to send the kids back to school.
Get it.
I mean, I'm not a politician. I'm not a strategist. I'm not a consultant. I'm not an expert. I'm not an academic, but I can see this shit coming from a mile away. And it's like, this is about to be bad. Like, if you think it's bad now, November is going to be terrible. And then we're going to be in the midst of an election that at least one of the presidential candidates has already made it clear that they intend on attempting to steal. I mean, guys, the America that we grew up in, I know that we, had our all different experiences, but whatever you may think of it, it looks as if it's about to be a kaput. Like the America pre-COVID is like, the COVID is like the line of demarcation, right? Like, this was America before COVID, and now we're about to be in America post-COVID. And it's about to look bad for a lot of people, but the elected leaders don't seem to be doing much. And it seems as though Congress might actually even go on summer vacation. Marcus, can you believe that? That Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi might let these people take their summer vacation breaks as the country is in free fall.
Yeah, Kim, you just hit it. These elections are coming up. And it is time for the people who are watching this show, wherever you're watching this show, to run for office. I'll say that. Like, it's time for
free. It costs $10 million, though, Marcus. It costs $10 million to run for U.S. Senate.
Listen,
you know that.
Listen. Yeah, it does cost $10 million, but you know what? Try it anyway, right? Like, try to keep certain people out of the primary. I don't give a damn, because here's the thing: we are running a Bill Clinton era crime thought process with a Lee Atwater Republican Party based on Republican, what's his name? The Big Gipper, whatever his name is, Ronald Reagan strategy.
I think he's like Barry Goldwater on steroids, honestly.
Right. So we have three former figures that are still literally running American government to this day. And we don't have new or individual thinkers who can just go up there and be like, all right, guys, this is bad. And, my whole district is about to die. And, there's poor people in my district who are suffering right now. And I'm getting the phone calls because, let's be honest. Every single one of these politicians have gotten the petitions saying do something about our economy, right? There's very few people who are elected outside of the progressive folks who are literally trying to actually do things, and they're being called too radical, even though somehow we can find money to fund the war across the seas for the past 25 years. So we need new blood. We need new ideas, and we need people who actually, can read their Twitter account. And when someone says, I'm dying, and could you make sure that I get $1,200 or $2,000 a month until this whole thing is over with? And could you tell my neighbors to sit down and stay home? And could you lock this motherfucker down, please? Until that happens, then what we're going to get caught up with is the same people making the same mistakes. I honestly don't believe that even a Democratic administration from the moderates can even fully shut down the society, because they are addicted to Wall Street also. Wall Street has to take a hit for this to get fixed, no matter how we do it. And whether that's a crash, or whether that's the government shutting down for a long enough time period, Wall Street has to take some kind of lump in order for our society to get better. And when that happens, then you'll start seeing some changes.
And also, too, I think that, people just don't understand how disconnected these processes are from one another. The whole system that we live in is so disjointed and so bogged down by so many things that it's impossible for people to kind of wrap their mind around it. You fixate on one little issue, and then that's connected to something else, and this is connected to something else. But what we really need is we just need dignity for people and for the working class and for the marginalized communities of this country. And the way that we do that is not through the way that has been happening before, which is right now what we're dealing with is the end result of piecemeal neoliberalism failing, utterly failing. And in the shadow of that, ascendant is this fascist right-wing nationalism that is taking a hold of our society because neoliberalism failed to produce what the people needed in order to survive. So as soon as, Joe Biden gets in there, or if he does get in there, we need to make the case to him that this shit that you've been doing is not working. You need to change. You need to be a bridge presidency 4 years, and you need to operate with X, Y, and Z things on a progressive agenda in mind. And if you don't, this presidency will fail and you will be done. So, I think that's what people out on the streets should take to mind and in terms of a historical analysis of what we're looking at.
I want us to stay here for a second, if we could, and talk about the election, because some of the polls that I've seen have Joe Biden up by a decent amount, I think by as much as 11 points, 10 or 11, 8 to 11 points, somewhere in there, which is definitely outside of the margin of error, and it definitely shows him with an advantage. However, I still have nightmares of 2016 where those same polls, baby, had Trump down the whole time. And then Donald Trump shocked the world and became the 45th president of the United States. A poll be damned. But here we are in approaching mid-July, and the Biden campaign has yet to select a running mate. There's no VP candidate. It does sound as if he is looking at a woman of color. A lot of the women whose names I've heard being batted around have, some connection to law enforcement. Either it's, Kamala Harris or Val Demings or, someone who used to be the police or prosecutor somewhere. And Joe Biden's campaign says that they're taking as much deliberate time to make this pick because, and this is valid, should Biden become elected president, he is an old man. whoever is his vice president needs to be ready to assume the Oval Office, right? Which is great. We could actually have a woman of color be president under some crazy circumstances, which would be amazing. But at the same time, Joe Biden does not necessarily represent the values of the people that have taken to the streets and that are getting a lot of these policy changes enacted on the local level. And we had one of our viewers send me an email, and this viewer was confused as to why some of us, the young left progressives and even the Black ones, why are we even debating voting for Joe Biden? Like, why is that even a debate in this viewer's mind? Because he's not Trump, so that should be good enough. We should just automatically support Joe Biden because of who he isn't. And, I didn't want to try to explain to this viewer, Joe Biden's policy history when he was in the Senate was extremely harmful to the Black community. And that's just not something that can be forgotten based off of, my bad. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're bad. We know you're bad. But, we forget. So Marcus, looking ahead towards the election, Joe Biden still has some work to do, because it's not a given that all the people who oppose Trump are necessarily going to come out and support Joe Biden. How does Joe Biden ensure an electoral victory in November? Because a lot of the places that Hillary Clinton lost or failed to visit in the final days before Election Day 2016 are still very much up for grabs as we look ahead towards November 2020.
Yeah, Joe Biden is in a kerfuffle, if anyone, because they have, that campaign has officially, sort of, quietly said it very out loud that, they don't think they have it in the bag. But, folks on that campaign also think that a Black super voter is the same thing as a turnout voter. And they're completely different universes, right? This Black people, and I'm going to go back to Black people because Black people historically have swung elections, whether we show up or we don't show up. Black people aren't going to vote for Donald Trump. But here's the thing. They're either going to vote for Joe Biden or stay home. And it's hyper attractive right now to a lot of people who've been disenfranchised to just stay home. I'm not motivated to vote for Joe Biden. And that is what makes his vice presidential choice so important. Is this person going to be able to galvanize the Black Midwest that the Clinton campaign so happily ignored in 2016 while they were busy, shopping for curtains for the White House? Is this person going to be someone that progressives actually feel like they want to go out and turn out at a high level? Is this person going to have conversations with the Black community that are outside of the gatekeeper class, outside of the CBC 35-year elected official class, who thinks they know a lot? And some of them do know a lot about the electorate, but some of them are living in a day and age when they could just tell you to, pull your pants up, watch the Cosby Show, and go vote. And that's the way their life is going to get fixed. And that's just not the case anymore. Like, people have real problems and the gig is up. The reason why the gig is up is because, as much as I love the brother, Obama's ran on hope and change, right? And I'm still without hope, and I didn't see much change. if I'm a black person in America right now, and that is a reality that neoliberal establishment folks don't want to address, because you fundamentally have to, once again, I'm going to go back to it. You fundamentally have to address capitalism. You fundamentally have to address redlining. You fundamentally have to address, neighborhoods getting, gentrified at a high rate. You have to address real issues. Joe Biden has to actually say something about why he, has been so quiet about the crime bill, and why that lackluster lift every voice plan, how it can be improved, and how come he doesn't want to defund the police. I can do this all day, but I don't want to. So what I'm going to say is very simple, right? Like, he got work to do, and whoever his vice president is going to have to pick up that slack, or, starting, whether he gets elected or not, November 5th, or the day after his election, we're going to have to start looking for a progressive person to replace that whole administration. And guess where they need to launch their campaign from? South Carolina.
You're right about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I think that,
Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Joe Biden, if he's out there somewhere on the interwebs, trying to work Zoom or something like that right now, he needs to realize that he can't rest on his laurels like Hillary Clinton did in 2016, because you see all these poll numbers you just outlined, Kim, and she was convinced that she had this shit in the bag. And
in the bag.
And she could not have been further from the truth. She misread the electorate so wrong. And if you don't present a way for people to actually want to vote for you, we've already showed in 2016 that if Clinton says, or a neoliberal candidate says, but if you don't elect me, then fascists will get in. I'm pointing the gun at fascism to you guys. You have to vote for me. I'm the only option. That doesn't work. That isn't a policy prescription. And as long as he continues down that track of, we gotta get the moral character of our society back, that's not gonna work. That moral character ain't gonna pay my damn bills. Like, you need to realize this shit. So I think, he really needs to kind of dig in and understand what the electorate's about. And then also, too, Trump, when his back is against the wall, he gets nasty. And he's bad when he knows he's down. So I'm not counting him out, because that's the way that he operates. He is a shrewd political operator. He may be stupid and not know anything about policy, but he understands how to tap into his base and scare the hell out of people. That ad that that we played, towards the beginning of the show, that showed that, he is playing on that fear narrative, because he knows that's his only ticket left. And so if Joe Biden doesn't have some way to answer that, we're going to be in a really bad predicament come 2020 November.
Tim, neoliberals have not seen anywhere close to what the monstrous ad blitz that the Republicans are going to do to try to subvert the black vote. Neoliberals have never seen what's about to come to them before, because they've never had to answer it with a conscious America, a conscious black America, an actively conscious black America watching and saying, okay, what are you going to say? When Donald Trump starts running, Joe Biden passed the crime bill and put your black ass in jail and your black ass cousin in jail. When he starts doing that, the Democratic Party is going to have to deal with a Kamala Harris that has a law enforcement background. The Democratic Party is going to have to deal with, the Congresswoman from Florida who is the police chief. The Democratic Party has to deal with Joe Biden, who wrote the damn crime bill. And they don't care about being soft. Donald Trump doesn't care about being soft. Donald Trump doesn't care about your sensibilities. Right, Joe Biden, Donald Trump is going to say everything that he possibly can say to keep black voters from voting for you. And here's the thing. They don't have to vote for him. They just don't have to vote for you. And voila, he gets reelected. So it would behoove that campaign to figure out some talking points. It would behoove Joe Biden to possibly say something like, hey, black people, I'm going to write a bill strong enough that that police officers will never kill you again. And if they do, they'll be held accountable. Hey, people of America, COVID is a very important thing. Let's figure out how we can cover all Americans with health care, right? I don't give a damn if you call it Medicare for all. Just make sure that people actually who get sick get covered for free. You can call it free care. I don't care, right? But the things that Americans care about, it's the perfect time for Joe Biden and that campaign to not just sit moderately and be soft asses about their policy points. It's the perfect time for them to be aggressive and actually say what Americans need. That's all there is to it. And once they do it, they're going to see the results of it. But right now they're giving Trump a piece of pie that he's going to eat. And he's going to eat their lunch. Trump is going to eat their lunch the way it's going right now.
He's ready to just capitalize on all this white resentment politics, too. I mean, if you see all the sound bites that he's put out, all this stuff that got him elected the first time, he is doubling down on it harder than he has since 2016. I mean, he's really out there saying that white people getting murdered more and all this ridiculous stuff by the cops. I mean, he's really out here just telling white people, I'm your boy. Let's go. You elected me before. Let's do it again. So, I mean, Joe Biden has to have a broader coalition than just, these people that want to bring America's moral character back, because it's not going to work. That's not a way that's going to fix any tangible problem. That's just a slogan.
Yeah, and I think that is the problem of the Biden campaign. Their lack of ability so far to draft a coalition, to create a coalition of different factions of people who would be inclined to vote Democrat, but are just, I'm sorry, just a little too woke in the moment to go in there and pull that lever for Joe Biden with a clear conscience. And again, let me just wrap this up because like I said, the viewer who wrote and asked about, Black people not voting for Biden. Why don't Black people want to vote for Biden? He's not Trump. And, we talk about voting in safe states. Just to be clear for this viewer, and I didn't reply to your email specifically, but I'm going to address it right now. When I say I live in a safe state, I live in a blue ass state, a state that has not gone Republican for a presidential candidate for 50 or 60 years. Andrew, also from a blue state, New Jersey, blue as shit. When was the last time New Jersey voted for a Republican? They not voting
for Donald Trump's ass in New Jersey. Definitely not.
So when we talk about safe states, and again, that's the privilege of living in a safe state. If I lived in Pennsylvania, if I lived in the state of Virginia, I would probably be voting for Joe Biden, really no questions asked. But I'm not asked to make that sort of decision. And I understand that does put me in a very privileged situation that a lot of people aren't in. I mean, Marcus lives in Georgia. Georgia has been red, but Georgia is, trying to purple it up. So I know Marcus has got to go out there and vote for Joe Biden. Am I speaking for you? I don't mean to speak for you on that aspect, Marcus.
I'm voting for Joe Biden and complaining all the way, way there. I'm gonna vote for the dude, and then once he gets elected, I literally am going to try to recruit people myself and progressives myself that actually give a damn about Black people and want to campaign to Black people to launch their campaign from some city in South Carolina.
Word them up. Chiefs.
Yeah.
That's a wrap for the show. We got to say goodnight to the folks. I'd like to thank Marcus Ferrell, Andrew Corkery for stopping by and hanging out and chatting. I love when y'all come through. It's always a great discussion. Marcus, Andros. Thank y'all so much for stopping by. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Y'all had the chat in the comments all the way live. We always would love to hear your emails as long as they're not crazy. stircrazy@therealnews.com. Guys, I'm your host, Kim Brown. We will see you tomorrow for the Friday edition of Stir Crazy. Have a good rest of your evening. See ya. Bye.